For thousands of years, people have asked the question, does God exist? But I believe what is much more elusive is the quality that is becoming rarer and harder to find: our humanity. Good morning. Welcome to Lost for Words, where we explore great women poets. I'm Sarah Woods. Today we are exploring a new poet, and her name is Kamand Kojouri, and this is her book, God, Does Humanity Exist? She just recently sent me her book of poetry to explore, and I'm very excited about it. She's very interesting to me. She's somebody that, like, when you talk to her, like, she is so kind and so sweet, and she is, just this really beautiful woman. And I feel like it's fascinating to me to open up this book of poetry and not know exactly what you're going to find when you open it up. And I feel like when I opened this up and started exploring that this poetry has like a fierceness to it. She also has another book of love poetry, which I imagine feels very different. But this book of poetry has like a feeling of like this call to action, like, let me stir you up, kind of like a preacher poet. It's kind of how I feel when I read this book of poetry. It's not the kind of poetry that you sort of come to and you get lost in, like fantasy land, la la land. It's more of like, I feel like I've had this, I don't know, in the Bible. Have you ever heard the story of, I think it was Paul? He was somebody who used to, I think he used to hurt Christians, and like he really did not like them, and I guess, he used to persecute them. And there was one day he was on a journey somewhere, and God showed up on this road as a light, and like it blinded him for 3 days. And that was where he had his first like real encounter with God, that changed his life. And he actually, I think, ended up, like it completely changed the direction of his life. There's something about this book of poetry that reminds me of kind of like if God were to do the opposite of that. Like if you were to be walking along and you're just like la-di-da doing your thing, and God were to be like, to take you and push, maybe not push, but like to like, maybe to push your head down into the ground and that you would, instead of encountering the light of God, like that you would experience the darker side of humanity and the sadness of humanity, that it would be like a pain. You would experience like, oh wait, there's more going on in the world, and it would bring you back up sort of humbled and like, oh my gosh, like there's so much heaviness in the world. What can we do about it to make it better? Or that's, I don't know. I have this like, I feel like it would make a cool painting. But to me, her poetry sort of, in this book, it makes you sort of confront the darker side of humanity, which is, it's funny, her book, it's called God, Does Humanity Exist? And when you look up the word humanity, it has two main meanings, and it can just mean the human race, or collectively human beings, or it can mean humaneness, benevolence, human nature. So it can kind of be like this neutral thing, or it can be like this, like to treat someone humanely is to like treat them like they matter, like they're valuable. That's funny to me. To me, it feels like that that definition is lacking, because it doesn't recognize that a part of our human nature, that part of the human nature that comes out of us is is sometimes quite terrible, that we pass trauma on through generations, we pass war on through generations, and so I feel like this book of poetry is her, it feels like a coming to terms with the darker side of humanity, and like being like, can't we be more? Like, if that makes any sense. So that was sort of where my journey started with Kamand Kojouri. And it sort of leaves you like, there's so many people out there asking like, God, does God exist? Who is God? Like, these like questions that are just so big. And she's kind of turning the lens around and like, is there any goodness in humanity, or are we all darkness? Like confronting it sort of. And it's funny, I didn't really know what I was going to find when I opened this book, but I sort of had this feeling that it was going to be somebody who's asking, God, does humanity exist? It feels like someone who has experienced a lot of pain from humanity, and wondering if there's anything good in us, So when you open up her book, it's split into 4 sections, and these are, she calls it Cries of Common Pain is the first section, Call to Action is the second section, Songs of Hope is the third, and Echoes of Hope is the fourth section. So I kind of like that. I like the idea that each of these little chapters is like, one is like a cry, the next is a call, the next is a song, and then like echoes. Like, I don't know, I feel like she did a really good job with like creating different elements of what the human voice can do at different points. A cry, a call, a song, an echo. Like, I really like that. But okay, so when I first opened this book and opened up to the first poem, for me it was like a shock, sort of like a shock, like coming awake sort of feeling. I don't know if many of you know, I've just finished going through Rupi Kaur's book of poetry, and her book of poetry is very much a personal perspective. Like, it's written from the perspective of I, most of the poetry in there. And so you feel like when you encounter her poetry that you're reading something from her perspective, and as you go along, you can kind of pick or choose if you want to relate to the things that are happening in her life or in her mind. But I feel like with this book of poetry, it's sort of like the very first poem kind of like is like shakes you awake sort of. This poem, it has the word they. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, at least 15, 16, 17. It's got at least 17 days. That was just a quick like look through. And it's not a super long poem. So that's a lot of the word they to happen in the very first poem of the book that we have here. So I'm going to read it to you now so I can sort of take you on this journey and we can explore this poem. So here it is. I believe it looks like she has the title is They Want Us to Be Afraid. It's sort of the first line and it's in bold, and maybe it's the title. But here we go. They want us to be afraid. They want us to be afraid of leaving our homes, to barricade our doors and hide our children. They aim to make us fear life. They want us to hate. They want us to hate the other, to practice aggression and perfect oppression. They aim to divide us all. They want us to be inhuman. They want us to throw out our kindness, to conceal our love and bury our hope. They aim to take all our light. They think their brick walls will separate us. They think their damned bombs will defeat us. They are so ignorant, they don't understand that my soul and your soul are old friends. They are so ignorant, they don't understand that when they cut you, I bleed. They are so ignorant, they don't understand that we will never be afraid, we will never hate, and we will never be silent. Let life be only ours. Oh my gosh, for some reason, now that I'm reading this out loud, it makes me want to cry. It's funny sometimes when you read something out loud, like you all of a sudden catch more of the feeling. Sometimes if you read it, some things when you read them silently, like it can just conjure up, your imagination. But there is something about saying the words out loud and with feeling. It was like I all of a sudden caught a little bit of the feeling underneath this poem. And I think the thing that it makes me, you can feel like, God, does humanity exist? And then the very first poem is this they poem. It is very much from one person or a group of people, and it's directed at this other group of people, this they. And you feel this energy that this side, this person, this group of people feels a pressure from some they, to be afraid, to hide your children, to fear, to hate other people, to be divided, to be inhuman, to lose your kindness, to lose your hope, to lose your light. That this other they is actually against this group of people or this person, and that they're trying to defeat them with bombs. And then this person on this side of it is saying this group of people is so ignorant, they don't understand that my soul and your soul, it's it feels like here that Kamand is she switched from they, this group of theys wanting to divide us, hurt us, make us lock ourselves up and bury our light, basically, to switching to having a conversation between her and the reader, maybe, whoever's reading it. And it says, they are so ignorant, they don't understand that my soul and your soul are old friends. They're so ignorant, they don't understand that when they cut you, I bleed. They are so ignorant, they don't understand that we will never be afraid. We will never hate. And we will never be silent. Let life be only ours. So I feel like to go from reading Rupi Kaur's poetry, which is totally from the I perspective, and like you're just sort of like watching her unfold, and you can kind of choose whether or not to relate to her stuff. This one, you crawl sort of into this person's perspective, and you're looking out at this group of this group of others that is like sort of terrifying, and you feel like this group of others is like trying to just ruin everything. And then she starts to have a conversation with the reader, and she's like, they don't understand that we're old, my soul and your soul are old friends. She starts to talk sort of about empathy between her and the reader, and sort of trying to be like, they want this, but me and you, we want our souls to be friends. When you are cut, I bleed. They are so ignorant, they don't understand that we will never be afraid. Like, me and you, we're going to be courageous, right? Like, we're never going to hate, right? And we're not going to be silent. Let life be only ours. And so you can feel her trying to like take her life back from this they that's out there. This actually, I don't know, this makes me want to cry. I don't know much about Kamand Kojouri's life, or what she has experienced. She's lived in a lot of different places. So I feel like she's somebody who's actually experienced a lot of different theys, a lot of different, maybe, for me, I feel like when I hear this word they, I'm almost wondering if for her it has anything to do with government, because I feel like, I don't know, when I read this, I can kind of think of government, media, people with a lot of power, and then people who don't have power is sort of what it makes me think of. And sometimes in the crosshairs of those people who are trying to have all the power, like these governments, these, elite people or whatever, these really like rich companies, like whatever they are, in their race for power and their like desire to keep power, that it has created oppression towards like the everyday person, is what I feel when I read this. Yeah, it very much makes me think of governments, and this feeling of like, because of this they, whoever this they is, like that, our lives are not our own, or her life is not her own. But this is very much her, you can feel her sort of calling us and trying to be like, no, like we don't, like they can do all that, but we don't have to engage in that. Like, we can be friends, like we can have empathy, and we can have courage. Let's make our lives our own. That's a very heavy poem to go, God, does humanity exist? And to open up, and the first poem is like very much a calling out of this other, this big group of people in power, maybe this government, maybe, I don't know who this, I guess to me that would be, I'd be really interested to know who this they is supposed to represent. And it kind of, for me, I'm like, okay, yeah, who is, I feel like that's a very important part of this poem. But can you feel how it sort of like wakes you up, this repetitive use of the word they, like sort of like a, it for me, it took me out of like Rupi Kaur's poetry of this like just, moving along to like sort of, I don't know if it's paranoid is the right word, but all of a sudden, like, from being very introspective to like, oh gosh, like what's going on? Who is this they? Like, what are they doing? It definitely has a like a feeling of becoming alert to your surroundings, and is there danger, and what are we going to do about it? How are me and you going to conduct ourselves in the middle of all of this? But yeah, so I am going to stop there this morning. There's so many like I feel like good poems for discussion in here. I have no idea where I'm going to go with this yet. I have no idea how many poems I'm going to do, or if I'm only going to do one from each chapter, or if I'm just going to sort of, sometimes when I explore poets, I just sort of jump around with whatever grabs my attention at the moment. But yes, this definitely, this book has made me think more about pronouns than I've ever thought in poetry. Just with that initial poem having so many theys, I then found myself like going through all of her poems like, okay, does this one have an I in it? Or no, it's got a we. This one has an I. And then I start noticing that some of her poetry, it's like it has like lots of commands, which is quite perfect for Kamand Kojouri. And then like in her call, I guess, like things like do not let our, like that's how some of her poems start off. Like it's come, like it is like a sort of be like the sun, let us go, very commanding. Then this poem is full of yous. Then this one is we, us, you. This one is I perspective, my, we. Yeah, I don't know. I find this fascinating. Here's an I poem. Yeah, I think that's really interesting to think about. Like, I guess that's not something I think about very much when I read a lot of poetry. Like some poetry, I guess it sort of is like just painting a picture and you sort of like get lost in the picture. But I feel like there's something about this, the way she switches between pronouns in all of these poems, constantly keeps you alert and like, is she talking about someone else? Is she including me in this poem? Is she telling me to do something in this poem? It definitely stirs you up and makes you think. Like it's not the kind of poetry where you like slide into it and like just relax there. It's very much a like stirring kind of poetry. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me as we explore this lovely poet. And I guess I will see you again next time. And also, if you are interested in having me explore your book of poetry, you can send me an email at lost4wordspoetry. I'll add the spelling at the end of this. And I also have an account on Instagram, Paper is My Lover, and that one you can send me a direct message over there. And you can also see my art over there, anything that I'm working on here in my studio. If you're ever interested in any of those paintings, you're more than welcome to contact me there. Anyway, have a great week. Goodbye. Also, thank you to Zachary J. Moore, an American composer, who let us use a piece of music for the beginning of our intro for Kamand Kojouri's poetry. That piece of music was actually inspired by one of her poems. So thank you so much, Zachary.